Mr. President, this past weekend, Republican presidential hopeful Donald Trump did what he did best, said something dishonest and really distasteful. In speaking about the senior senator from Arizona, he mocked Senator John McCain, mocked his service in the Vietnam conflict. He went so far as to say that John McCain was not a war hero. Mr. President, John McCain and I came to the House of Representatives the very same day, both new members of the House. He is representing a district in Arizona, my district in Nevada. We're neighbors. We served together in the House. We came here to the Senate at the same time. He's one notch ahead of me in seniority in this body because the state of Arizona has more people than Nevada. That's how seniority is determined when you come in, among other ways. John McCain was a naval pilot coming from a family who served our country in the military admirably for decades and decades. His grandfather, his father. John McCain, in one of his first missions over Vietnam, was shot down, badly injured, broken back, arms hurt very, very much. He was placed in a Vietnamese concentration camp where he spent almost 6 years. About half that time was in solitary confinement, and many days and weeks of that was spent being punished, tortured, re-breaking parts of his body that had been broken. Mr. President, John McCain, to me, is a hero. I think here's a person who has represented this country admirably in the Congress. He was a Republican nominee for president. America knows John McCain. Now, I personally have some disagreements on policy on an occasion or two with John McCain, but we've never disagreed about our relationship. And my relationship with Senator McCain is one where I have great admiration for him, for his strength of character, for his moral courage in Vietnam. So, Mr. President, in the aftermath of these remarks about John McCain, Republicans have been falling all over themselves to criticize Donald Trump. But it makes me wonder, where are all these same Republicans when Mr. Trump slandered millions? It was only a month ago that Trump said, and I quote, "When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're sending people that have lots of problems, and they're bringing them those problems with us. They're bringing drugs. They're bringing crime. They're bringing rapists." That's his quote. When Trump insulted the senator from Arizona, a member of his own party, Republicans couldn't denounce him fast enough. But when Trump called immigrants rapists, there was nothing but silence, nothing but silence. There's an ugly truth behind that silence, and it's this. When it comes to immigration policy, and frankly most other policy, there's no meaningful difference between the Republican Party and Donald Trump. Consider the facts, just on this one issue. Trump rejects a pathway to citizenship for these undocumented. Instead, he favors a system of merit that creates a road to legal status. He's never, ever spent 2 sentences defining that. We've heard before the same kind of talk from Republicans, those running for president. I think we're going to have 16 of them now. Jeb Bush rejects a pathway to citizenship. He claims to support a pathway to legal status, but, quote, not necessarily citizenship, close quote. Scott Walker rejects a pathway to citizenship. He said, and I quote, "If somebody wants to be a citizen, they need to go back to their country of origin." The junior senator from Texas also rejects a pathway to citizenship. He said, and I quote, "I think that it's likely that there could be some bipartisan solution to these who are here illegally if a path to citizenship were taken off the table," close quote. Governor Chris Christie rejects a pathway to citizenship too. He said, quote, "It's an extreme way to go," close quote. Trump wants to terminate President Obama's executive action on immigration, tearing apart millions of families and about 800,000 dreamers. We've heard that before too. Jeb Bush also wants to repeal President Obama's executive actions. On Fox News, he said, that was on the Hannity show, he would repeal Obama's executive amnesty. That's a quote. Junior senator from Texas also wants to terminate the president's executive actions. Here's what he said, I quote, "If I'm elected president, the very first thing I tend to do is, on the first day, rescind every single unconstitutional or illegal executive action from President Obama," close quote. Governor Chris Christie is actively opposing the president's executive action. In fact, his state joined a lawsuit challenging President Obama's actions. The junior senator from Florida also rejects President Obama's executive action that keeps families together. Senator Rubio's spokesperson told one news outlet, and I quote, "Immigration executive orders won't be permanent policy under a Rubio administration," close quote. These are the facts. When it comes to immigration policy, and I mentioned, sadly, most other policy issues, there's no daylight between Donald Trump and the rest of the Republican field. So while the rest of the Republican presidential hopeful may not engage in the same repugnant rhetoric, make no mistake, they're all on the same page with Donald Trump. I ask each Republican running for president, name one difference between your immigration policy and that of Trump's immigration policy. Given recent history, there will be a deafening silence. When Trump insulted McCain, Republicans couldn't announce him fast enough. But when Mr. Trump called millions of hardworking immigrants rapists and murderers, nothing but silence. Maybe this is because none of the Republicans running for president can name a single way in which they disagree with Trump's policies on immigration. In the meantime, Democrats will continue to fight to pass comprehensive immigration reform, just as we did more than 2 years ago. We'll continue to fight Republican piecemeal legislation that criminalizes whole communities. And we'll continue to fight for immigrant families who are constantly being scapegoated. Found yesterday's Kurt Eichenwald's article in Newsweek really frightening. I ask consent that that writing be submitted in the record.
Without objection.
The piece is very, very thorough. But I'm only going to quote a few things because of the time of the Senate. One, the article says that if elected, Donald Trump would be, and I quote, "the most conflicted president in American history. And almost every foreign policy decision he would make will raise serious conflicts of interest and ethical quagmires." The author details how Donald Trump, his family, and his businesses have multiple questionable partnerships with foreign governments, political parties, and even criminals. Newsweek article ends with this sound declaration, and I quote, "Never before has an American candidate for president had so many financial ties with American allies and American enemies. And never before has a business posed such a threat to the United States." Close quote. We face from Donald Trump a candidate and a notorious con artist. Donald Trump is only trying to help one person, Donald Trump. I don't care if he wants to be president or city commissioner. Donald Trump is in to benefit Donald Trump. If given the opportunity, Donald Trump will turn America into a big scam, just like Trump University. Mr. President, I can't make up this stuff. Here's what one of his managers said at Trump University, head of sales, quote, here's what he said it was, "a fraudulent scheme, and that it preyed upon the elderly and uneducated to separate them from their money." That's somebody, one of the managers of Trump University. That's a direct quote. But Trump University is only one. Trump has been ripping off people for a long, long time.
long before Trump University. The list of people cheated by Donald Trump is a mile long at least. Glass Company in New Jersey, a children's singing group, real estate brokers, plural, plumbers, painters, dishwashers, and many, many more. They all got fleeced by this so-called billionaire Trump. And when Trump gets sued for not paying, here's what he does. He hires lawyers, lots of lawyers most of the time, to defend him from having cheats, from having cheated lots of people. And then guess what? Many times he doesn't bother paying those lawyers. They have to sue him. He rips off people only to reap profit for himself. Now, a lot of his business I don't understand very well, but I understand Atlantic City. I was the chairman of the Nevada Gaming Commission for 4 very tumultuous years. I was there when we allowed Nevada operations to go to Atlantic City. So I understand what took place in Atlantic City. He'll do anything to make a buck for himself. If Donald Trump, he applied for a license a number of years ago in Nevada and was a passive owner. He got one. It was just perfunctory. If he applied for a license day after what he did in Atlantic City and what he's done since, he couldn't get a gaming license in Nevada. Let's be clear about Donald Trump. He's a spoiled brat raised in plenty who inherited a fortune, used his money to make more money, and he did a lot of it by swindling working men and women. Why would he change as president? The answer is simple. Trump won't change. He's asking us to let him get rich scamming America. Mr. President, I know these are harsh words, but look at this man. He goes to Flint, Michigan, where people are desperate for help. Desperate for help. He goes to an African-American church. And what does he do? He just starts ranting about how horrible Hillary Clinton is. It was so bad that the woman that runs the church had to come up and say, stop. You're not here to do this. And he stopped. And this morning he said there was, she obviously was something wrong with her mentally. Trump is a human leech who will bleed the country and sit at his golf resort laughing at the money he has made, even though working people many have been hurt and ruined. Trump doesn't understand the middle class. How could he? How could he understand working people? Because he's only out for Donald Trump. This report from Newsweek proves Trump's plans to take his rigged game straight to the White House. The integrity and security of our democracy is really at stake. We can't chance the sovereignty of this nation on a con man like Trump. Where is Senator McConnell and Speaker Ryan when America needs their help from this person running for president? The senior senator from Louisiana is the architect of this bill, which targets the so-called sanctuary cities. Senator Vitter's legislation fails to match the family values rhetoric that he so frequently touts. This vile legislation might as well be called the Donald Trump Act. Like the disgusting and outrageous language championed by Donald Trump, this legislation paints all immigrants as criminals and rapists. At its core, Senator Vitter's bill undermines the ability of local law enforcement officials to police their own communities and ensure public safety. It's no surprise that the Fraternal Order of Police and the major chiefs of police do not support the Vitter sanctuary legislation, and that is an understatement. The Donald Trump Act would establish new mandatory minimum sentences for those who enter the country illegally. Initial estimates show that this new mandatory minimum in this bill would result in the need for 20,000 new prison beds, 20,000, requiring the construction of 12 or more huge new federal prisons costing billions and billions of taxpayer dollars. But it seems Republicans don't care about the cost to public safety. And they don't care about the cost of building new prisons. A few billion here, a few billion there of taxpayer dollars, that's okay. After all, Republicans are not really proposing this bill to solve any problem within our immigration system. This Donald Trump Act was designed to demonize immigrants and spread the myth that they're criminals. And Trump is standing on the platform of hate. And I'm sorry to say hate that the Republican Party has built for him. It was just last week I came to the floor here and said that the Republican Party is running on a platform of hate. Yesterday, Donald Trump provided the strongest evidence yet that it's true. Trump's proposal to bar Muslims from entering this country is hateful, despicable, and really vile. We're a country founded on religious liberty, not a country that imposes religious tests. Trump's statement is a slap in the face to the millions of peace-loving Muslims living here and to those who want to travel and live here. We welcome them all and say Donald Trump is not America. Sadly, however, Donald Trump has become the Republican Party because it's just not him. Many of the leading candidates for the Republican nomination have said the same hateful things, especially about Muslims. Jeb Bush, Ted Cruz proposed a religious test for refugees. You can't condemn Trump when you want to impose a religious test on women and children fleeing death and persecution. Ben Carson's called Muslims rabid dogs. Chris Christie has said they should be tracked. Today, Donald Trump offered the only true statement he's made for some time, referring to some of his fellow Republicans, those running against him for president. Here's what he said, quote, "They've been condemning almost everything I say, and then they come to my side," close quote. It's disturbing, but it's true. Republican candidates condemn Trump's remarks and adopt his racist policies as their own. We shouldn't try to fool ourselves. This sort of racism has been prevalent in Republican politics for decades. Trump's just saying out loud what other Republicans merely suggest. Political leaders must condemn these hateful, un-American statements with their words and their actions. Silence only empowers. Throughout history, in times of crisis and tragedy, American people look to leaders for one thing: leadership. Americans don't want to hear excuses. We don't want to hear self-congratulations. We don't want to hear scapegoating. It's a very simple concept. We want our leaders to lead. In the aftermath of Sunday's shooting at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, Florida, a place of celebration for the LGBT community, Donald Trump proved that he is a terrible leader, as he is a terrible businessman. Trump proved that he's not the person to lead our nation through difficult times, or in fact, any time. Trump failed the most important of tests for a presidential candidate: how to respond in a crisis. When our citizens are under attack, how do you respond? Donald Trump failed that test. Trump proved he's not the person to lead our nation through a crisis. He is not commander-in-chief material, underlined, underscored. But so it doesn't matter what the problem has been, Trump has failed. Trump isn't the person we want to have his finger on the nuclear button because he's clearly incapable of that responsibility. That's just not me saying it. Even the junior senator from Florida has questioned whether Trump can be trusted with such an enormous obligation. But the fact that Donald Trump can't be trusted with the nuclear codes hasn't stopped Senator Rubio or many other Republicans from endorsing Trump for the highest office in the land. There's absolutely no question, none. Donald Trump is not capable enough or experienced enough to this high level of responsibility. We expect more from a commander-in-chief. Here's how Trump responded to Sunday's massacre. Classic Trump. Within hours of the shooting, Trump first congratulated himself, and then began to immediately denigrate Muslim Americans. Trump then suggested our president and one of Secretary Clinton's aides may be in league with Islamic terrorists. Let me repeat that. Donald Trump suggested President Obama and one of Secretary Clinton's aides may be in league with Islamic terrorists. Is this outrageous? Of course it is. Is it outrageous for Donald Trump to suggest that the President of the United States, our commander-in-chief, would support terrorists and the murder of innocent Americans? But yesterday, one day after the mass shooting is the worst in modern American history, Trump, the standard bearer for the Republican Party, went even further. Trump delivered one of the most un-American speeches ever from a major party nominee, ever. Trump was hateful, he was vicious, he was Donald Trump. Everything that Republicans knew him to be when they made him the party's nominee. Donald Trump used his remarks to foment hatred against millions of innocent Americans based solely on what? On their religion. He denigrated Muslim Americans, all 8 million of them. Republican nominees suggest that all Muslim Americans were complicit in the Orlando shooting, saying that they, Muslim Americans, and listen to this one, this is a direct quote, know what's going on, close quote. Trump also renewed his call for a ban on all Muslims coming to the United States. Trump's speech was, as one news outlet called it, and this direct quote, a dangerous mix of ignorance and arrogance, close quote. If you're the parent of a Muslim American, how do you explain his speech to your child? If you're not a Muslim parent, how do you explain Trump's speech to your child? You can't. How do you look your son or daughter in the eye and explain that a man running for president is telling your classmates to be suspicious of you, to doubt your loyalty to this country based upon your religion? Solely on your religion, purely on your religion. You can't explain it. I can't explain it. It's not possible to explain because this level of hate is not comprehensible. It's incomprehensible that any presidential nominee would foster and promote systematic bigotry, as Trump often does. It's reprehensible and un-American for the nominee of any major party or any party to declare millions of Americans guilty and to prove innocent, purely by virtue of their religion. These are frightening times, and I understand that. And Trump's fear and paranoia are making us feel less safe. Trump is fanning the flames of violence and menace. Already there have been reports of threats and obscenities being yelled at Muslims in Florida, in Chicago, and Seattle, all across the country, and mosques around the country have been threatened. Donald Trump's rhetoric is encouraging this scary behavior. What we have seen from Trump in the 2 days since the Orlando shooting is rank and it's reckless. But no one should be surprised. This is vintage Donald Trump. Contrast Donald Trump's actions with the response from our nation's Muslim communities. Muslim leaders all over America are some of the first to condemn this attack and rally in support of the LGBT community. And the Muslim community has taken part in the blood drive to help the victims of the attack, as they always step forward. While Americans within the Muslim and LGBT communities are trying to unite Americans in the aftermath of Sunday's shooting, Donald Trump is doing just the opposite. He's doing what he's so good at doing, dividing. And then in the wake of this awful massacre, Trump tried to cast himself as a friend of the LGBT community. How about that? But it didn't take minutes for a spokesman for the Human Rights Campaign, the nation's largest gay rights group, stating that Trump is, quote, no friend of the community. What does it say about the Republican Party? That they're endorsing this vile man? Doesn't say much. What does it say about Republican senators that they're backing Trump for president? Not much. What does it say about Senate Republican leadership, about the Senate Republican leader that he's supporting Trump? Not much. Every time the senior senator from Kentucky reaffirms his commitment to support Trump, he's validating Trump's behavior. He's giving credence to Donald Trump's rabid anti-everything speech. His anti-American stances against Muslims, women, Latinos, blacks, people with disabilities, immigrants, veterans, and others. If they, senators I've mentioned, accept this kind of rhetoric as part of our political dialogue, they're all guilty of normalizing hatred. Senate Republicans are doing just that. When the leader of a major party is promoting unhinged conspiracy theories and calling for hatred against his fellow Americans based solely on their religion, we're in dangerous and uncharted waters. We must make clear that Donald Trump does not speak for us. I'm trying to do that. We must stand arm in arm with our Muslim allies around the world who have been victims of terrorism, who say to the radicals, not in my name. Not in my name. And remember, Muslims around the world are helping us defeat the terrorist attacks. Who has suffered so much because of this crazy brand of hatred? Who has suffered more than anyone else? Muslims. We don't know how many are dead in Iraq following the invasion, 500,000. We know at least 300,000 in Syria. They're Muslims. We must stand arm in arm with our Muslim allies around the world who have been victims of this terrorism. Any Republican who cherishes the American values of religious freedom and tolerance should immediately do the same. Say, not in my name. Republican senators should say, not in my name. Republicans must do what they have had. They must do what they haven't had the courage to do. Stand up to Trump and say no more. Stop it. He's not a leader. He's unfit to be our president, unfit to stand for the values upon which this great country was founded. As for the Republican leader in the Senate, Senator McConnell should be the first to condemn Trump's hateful rhetoric and reject his presidential candidacy. Let's hope the senior senator from Kentucky can bring himself to do just that and do it. Mr. President, working people in our great country are tired of being ripped off by really rich people. Some who are billionaires, some who claim they're billionaires. During the financial crisis, Wall Street took Main Street to the cleaners. Oh, did it hurt the state of Nevada. All of Nevada. Reno, Las Vegas. Clobbered rural Nevada. American families lost their savings, their livelihoods, their businesses because of the greed of a few. The last thing the American people want or need is a president who will run another financial scam on each of them. If elected, Donald Trump would be the scammer in chief. Trump is a fraud. That's a word that I chose. He was born with an inheritance but lost his daddy's wealth. Mr. President, that is why Donald Trump won't release his tax returns. That's certainly one of the reasons, of course. He is not worth nearly as much as he claims to be. That's a secret he doesn't want anyone to know. He wants everyone to think he's this big, rich man. We know that Trump lies about his money. I'm not making that up. He once admitted he assesses his net worth on a whim. This is what he said during one of his many depositions, which is it's a court proceeding where you gather evidence. And he's appeared before many for his deposition. But this is what he said on one occasion on his many sworn statements. Here's what he said. Of course, I keep stressing, this is one of the multitude of lawsuits to which he has been party, and I quote, this is Donald Trump talking. My net worth fluctuates, and it goes up and down with markets, and with attitudes and with feelings, even with my own feelings, close quote. Simply put, Trump is faking his net worth because he doesn't want us to know that he's not a good businessman. And he's not as rich as he would have us believe. Donald Trump's business record speaks for itself. He's ruined company after company, hotel after hotel. Over the last couple of decades, we know of at least 6 of his companies that have gone into bankruptcy. Trump's other business ventures, such as Trump Steaks, yeah, there was really one, Trump Steaks, those things you eat. Trump Magazine, those things you read. And Trump University, those places you're supposed to be educated. They were all financial flops. Trump claims to be as tight in the real estate industry. But the Washington Post reported on more than one occasion he doesn't crack the list of major real estate players in New York City, let alone the country. Earlier this year, the New York Times reported that Trump has such a bad business reputation that banks don't wish to lend him money anymore. In lieu of real business success, Donald Trump resorts to scams like Trump University. That is, he's done some doozies, but that's one of the best scams. Now, at Trump University, he ripped off everyone from students interested in real estate to retirees looking to invest their savings. Trump University is under investigation by the New York Attorney General's office. He's the defendant in other class action lawsuits. Why? Because he cheated people, cheated them. Litigation is nothing new to Donald Trump. Over the last decade and a half, Trump and his companies have been sued in federal court 72 times. That doesn't take into consideration the many times he's been sued in state courts. 72 federal cases, many more times in state courts. But Trump, being the flim-flammer he is, just moves on to another scheme. He even cheats charities. He has a charity. That's a broad definition of a charity. It's called the Trump Foundation. Trump started his charity because he's desperate to get invited to fancy parties and be seen with these people who give their own money. And he seeks acceptance among the wealthy. Since 2008, Trump has not donated a single penny to his own charity, the Trump Foundation. Does he have money to donate? Well, he says he should, but he doesn't. Americans are far more generous, even though they're modestly of means, but they contribute generously to charities every day, but not the Donald. No. Instead, he goes to other individuals and charities and asks them to donate to his foundation. The Trump Foundation is as much a charity as is Donald Trump's personal ATM machine. Trump uses the money he gets from other charities to buy himself gifts. 4 years ago, Trump paid $12,000 of charity resources to buy a football helmet signed by Tim Tebow. Tim Tebow, I'm sure, is a fine man. His college career was terrific, Heisman Award winner. His professional career was kind of wasn't so good. But everything I know about the man, he's a good person. Now he's playing, he's 29 years old, and with his great physical attributes, he's trying it at baseball. He hasn't played baseball since he was in high school, but high school he hit almost 500 his last year in high school. And I hope he does well. But here's the deal with the helmet. If Trump wants to buy Tim Tebow's helmet, or Willie Mays' bat, or Ernie Banks' glove, whatever he wants to buy, that's his right. But should he use his own money, but not Donald Trump? No, he didn't use his money to buy Tim Tebow's helmet. He didn't use his checkbook to buy the memorabilia. Instead, he used the Trump Foundation charity money, money that was supposed to be given to somebody that needed help. $12,000, a big shot, bidding on a helmet. But it's not his money. It's charity's money. The Internal Revenue Service calls this sort of thing self-dealing. Self-dealing is when a person spends charity money on themselves. It's against the law. It's illegal. But Trump doesn't care about what the law is. If he doesn't have the money himself, which obviously he doesn't, then he uses other people's money. Other people's money is put in his charity, and he spends it on himself. So this is who Republicans want to be our president. This is who Republicans, even Leader McConnell, Speaker Ryan, want this man to prepare a budget for our country. Trump can't be trusted with his own charity. And are we supposed to believe that he can manage the nation's treasury, provide money for our armed services, or homeland security? This is a man who uses charities to bilk even police officers, In 2009, Donald Trump asked the Charles Evans Foundation for a donation to his charity, to the Trump Foundation. Trump told him he needed the money to donate to the Palm Beach, Florida Police Foundation. They gave Trump $150,000. They gave it to his charity. Donald Trump took that money and gave it to the Palm Beach Police Foundation. He didn't match it with a dime of his own. Trump took the Charles Evans Foundation money and donated it as for his own. But here's where the story gets even more absurd, even worse. What kind of a man is this person running for president? Well, this is a little slight indication. When the Palm Beach Police Foundation wanted to use Trump's South Florida resort to honor him for this gift he gave. Remember, the gift was from somebody else, but he claimed credit for it. Trump charged them for the event, for the room, for the food. It's estimated that Palm Beach Police Foundation paid the Trump hotel operation $200,000 to honor himself. Donald Trump ran a hustle on many different charities that netted his resort money. And he didn't spend a penny of his own money along the way. Trump never worries about being caught because he financially rewards the people who would investigate the racket that he's perpetuated. For example, in 2013, the Attorney General of Florida, Pam Bondi, announced that she was joining the New York investigation into Trump University. That went away. The investigation went away quickly. 4 days after announcing the probe, Donald Trump sent her $25,000 to her campaign. The Attorney General announced almost immediately it would not be investigating Trump University. It wouldn't join with the state of New York. And guess what money Trump used to persuade the Attorney General to change her mind? Was it his money? Oh, no. Money from his charity? You got it. Of course, that's illegal, but he did it anyway. He got credit from the Attorney General of Florida. How can Senator McConnell and Speaker Ryan continue to endorse this man? How can Republicans continue to close their eyes to the fact that this swindler is running for president and he's ripping off the American people and our government? This Republican Congress has spent millions of your tax dollars on political hit jobs masquerading as investigations. Untold amounts of money on Benghazi, on emails. And they found nothing, of course, zero. And they've acknowledged that. So I've got another job for them. Why don't they investigate Donald Trump? They could do it quickly. They're all set to do this. They don't mind spending taxpayer dollars. All this investigation of the Clinton operation has always been taxpayer dollars. They should take a cue, though, I think, from the Attorney General of the state of New York and hold Trump accountable for scamming charities, the IRS, and the American people. Donald Trump desperately wants people to believe that he's a brilliant, rich businessman. In reality, he's a silver spoon-toting fraud who would never make it in the real world without his father's money. That's why Trump's entire business career has been one scam after another, whether it's Atlantic City, where he cheated everybody, got rich at the expense of others. If there's one reason that Atlantic City's gone downhill, and it has, Donald Trump. He's always looking for a mark, some victim for one of his schemes, because he's incapable of making money honestly. Now, our country is Trump's next target. He wants this to be his biggest